people, you think about Malaco with all of the gospel artists, but originally, they started out as a blues label. You remember the song "Groove Me" and Mr. Big Stuff, and from ZZ Hill, Johnny Taylor, Lil Milton, Bobby Bland, Dorothy Moore, Denise LaSalle. All of those artists were with Malaco, and so I think may have been in the early '80s. They decided to jump into the gospel field. And so Frank Williams, who was the guitar player and the lead singer with the Jackson Southerners, and who's also the brother of Melvin and Doug Williams of the Williams brothers, they convinced Frank to come off the road with the Southerners to be able to head up this division. So Frank left the Southerners, came in, and Frank knew all of the gospel artists out there, the Pilgrim Jubilees, Willie Neal Johnson, the gospel keynote. You talk about Robert Blair and the Violinaires, and the Sensational Nightingales, Angelics. All of those groups came to Malaco because of Frank. Mm-hmm. And so he was the one, Jackson Southerners, the Williams brothers, all of them, Kristen Ayers. And so all of them came through, but they used Frank as a cornerstone to start this gospel division. And so,
well, it worked. It
worked.
Oh
man, and Frank was one of those guys. People know him as more as a vocalist, but Frank was a guitar player. Frank was a producer. Frank was a songwriter, and just if you think about. I listened to a lot of the music he produced in the day, and Frank was a guy, he produced the Nightingale, they sound like the Nightingale. He produced the Jude, they sound like the Jude. A lot of folks, you can kind of tell their production, they leave their fingerprint, but Frank had the ability to be able to touch an artist and really not leave his fingerprints on it. So that was one of his gifts, but the label was, Frank was the one that came in to really just build the label to where it is today.
Well, let me just say this, Jerry, because man, I remember all those songs, and then that's the Mississippi Mass Choir. You guys were traveling, you were all over the place, and putting out some of these songs, and you got Mosie Burks. I could just imagine what it was like because she wasn't gonna follow no script. You had to say, go out there and go get her because she done took off now.
Oh, look, Mama was something, but but going back and kind of coming up to Mama Burks, when Frank had this vision to do a choir, and he worked with the Florida Mass, Georgia Mass, all these choirs, so he had a vision to do one in Mississippi, but the record company, they had just convinced him to come off the road 5 or 6 years earlier. They knew if he formed this group, he probably gonna be back out there. So the company really wasn't really keen on the formation of Mississippi Mass, but Frank convinced them, and in 1988 we sent a clarion call out throughout the state of Mississippi for singers, and we ended up with 150 singers from all over the state.
Wow, they came from Cleveland, Tunica, Jackson.
Tupelo, from the Gulf Coast, from the Mississippi Delta, every region of the state. Our members came in, and in October 1988, we recorded our first project, the one with Near the Cross, Having You There, Call Him Up, and it went #1 in the country 6 weeks after the release, and stayed there for 48 consecutive weeks, which was an all-time record for any genre of music. And so from the very beginning, the project, it leaped out. It did so well. We entitled our second project, God Gets the Glory, because we knew that it was nothing that we did to really make, to give this success to this project. And so, but Frank was, he had the vision to do this, and then in 1993 he contracted this respiratory disorder, and passed, and then you would talk about Mama Burks, and with Frank's passing, that was the when Mama Burks came into the choir. She was not an original member. She didn't really come into the choir till 1994,
Mm-hmm.
and it was almost like the baton was
Was
passed
passed.
to her, and she became kind of like the face of the choir. And we were talking a moment ago about Mama. Everybody knew her from that gray hair and the shaking of
Yeah.
her head,
Yeah.
and she really was and was iconic. You know, I remember when we were in South Africa, we were on tour there, and we were at the airport getting our baggage, and there were people walking by and pointing at her from South Africa, saying, "That Mama Burke, that Mama Burke." They
Yeah.
knew her. They knew her in South Africa,
Well, let me
and
just say this, Jerry, because you're right. Because even ESPN, Scott Van Pelt, I'm
I'm
not
not
tired
tired
yet.
yet. Look, that was his theme song. And Cedric, I remember when we were at the Stella Award the year that the project was up for Stellas that year, and the and no, we did a track to make sure that that we didn't go. Matter of fact, the Stella Award required a music track, and that way they knew that the band couldn't go over. So it's probably about 3.5 to 4 minutes.
That ain't enough time,
Look,
Jerry.
but when the track went off, the audience would not stop singing the song. And Donnie McClurkin was hosting that year, and Donnie said, "Y'all, come on, y'all. Now y'all got to stop. So y'all know we got to go on with the show." But the audience would not stop singing it. But Mama Burks just had, Scripture talks about the race not given to the swift and the battle to the strong, and not by might nor by power, but His Spirit. Mama Burks had that spirit,
Yeah.
and it translated young, old. When we were the choir was out on the road with the McDonald's tour one year, and it amazed me how the other artists was coming up to her, trying to get pictures with her, trying to get an autograph, and she had no idea why people would want to try to get a picture with her. She was just that humble, but yeah, but the baton passed to her in 1994, and we were about to record our 11th project before the pandemic hit, and that kind of knocked us out. And also with her, she had retired by then, and so with our new release, she's not on it, but it was like the baton had been passed again.
Yeah.
And so we're going into a whole nother season. We brought in 64 new members for this new project, bringing our strength up to 214.
Well, let me go back to something. You guys also brought artists in like Kalante Gavin and Dottie Peoples. Dottie did her. What was that project? That was a
That was
spell.
that was Malaco's 50th anniversary,
Okay.
and so they had Fred Hammond and like you said with Dottie, a whole host of people that came in to celebrate Malaco's 50th. But we've always, for our project, we've always had special guests like Reverend Milton Bigham from Georgia
Yeah.
Mass. We
Yes.
had Reverend James Moore, Walter Hawkins, Beverly Crawford. And on this project, we even had Tina Campbell. We had Brian Courtney Wilson, Paul Porter, Myron Butler, Krista Akins. But we've always had those special guests there.
Well, let me just say this because Mosie was sitting in the audience while Dottie was singing her song. And I said, she gonna come up on the stage, so you might as well give her the microphone. Gave it to her.
Give it
She
to
would
her.
she wouldn't let go.
Mama was I've never seen anything like her. And she did, she worked out every day. She did water aerobics, and she was in the best physical health a lot of she would outpace a lot of our young folks. She
Yeah.
just had that energy, and it was almost like Mama was probably 65, 66 when she joined the choir.
Yeah.
But she came in with such energy, enthusiasm, until it made a lot of our younger members look bad.
Oh, now what part of Mississippi is she from, by the way?
She's from Jackson. Jackson,
Okay.
right here in the center of the state, and and this is where we're based out of Jackson,
Yeah.
because it's right in the middle. And so Mama is she's from here in Jackson.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about The Promise, and you got Stan Jones in it. Man, I love that
Ooh.
song. Talk about the success on that song.
And we were really about 6 weeks out from recording, and we were looking for, when you're putting a project together, you try to let it be very diverse. And so, and we are a traditional choir, and so we're going to always put out music that's going to be true to our roots. But we recognize that a fruit tree can't just be about roots. In order to produce fruit, you have to branch out. And so when Stan wrote this song and I heard it, I said, wow, that's what we've been waiting on. This song that's going to really stretch us. And so it's a song that's I think when you listen to the words, it's just saying we are holding to the promise. And in the book of Habakkuk, the prophet talks about if there's no cattle in the stall, if there's no fig on the vine, that he still believes that God is who he say he is. And so in these times that we're in, coming out of the pandemic, we're just saying we still believe. And after 10 years of recording, it had been 10 years between our last recording, we still believe that there's a place for choir in the gospel industry. We still believe that traditional music, there's a place for it. And so the promise kind of summed all of that up for us. And then it was the first single released from the new project. And as a matter of fact, it went #1 in the country in December on the Billboard media-based gospel airplay chart. And so yeah, but it's still getting play. And then with our new release, on the way One Way Home, it's tracking that same direction toward #1. So we're excited.
I'm going to pull up my screen right now. Now, the deal is because when you do stuff and you run it on YouTube, I had to run the volume down low, but I want people to check this out, man, because when I look at this and they're seeing the screen right now, y'all got an old Red Barn church somewhere out in the country, and it looks like you're up under a big tent and all these people there shouting and doing everything. But my favorite part, man, y'all didn't use no computers on this. You brought some brass out. Man, you used to play the trombone, man. You did like a New Orleans twist on this thing. And it's called One Way. My God, y'all gotta listen to this song. I don't want them to cut off my man. YouTube is so picky about certain things. I don't want to cut off. I just want to know it. So tell us about this song, One Way. And thank you for the trombone player.
Well, on the One Way Home was a lyric that I actually wrote about 20 years ago, and just been in the can. The time wasn't right for it, and so when getting ready for the project, I had when I originally I heard the song as a ballad, something that was slow. But I got with Benjamin Cone III, who's the son of Reverend Benjamin Cone of the Mass, who did the Birds.
That deep voice, deep verse.
Deep, oh, Jesus. Yeah, so his son, Benji, is also in the choir. He's our one of our principal lead singers, and his son is actually our drummer. So we had 3 generations right there. But Benji and I got together on the lyric. I shared it with him, and he all of a sudden he came up with this melody. And then Stan Jones was there with us, and Stan said, well, I think we need to change the tempo, because originally it was kind of in the tempo of Come On in the Room.
Yep.
So Stan changed the tempo, and man, and when we rehearsed it with the choir for the first time, we knew that we had something, and we wanted to have that New Orleans feel to it. And matter of fact, that big top tent that we were under was at the New Orleans Jazz Fest. So
really?
When you right there on the screen, when you see those people with the umbrellas, and that's in New Orleans at the Jazz Fest last year.
That's that second line deal,
That's it right there under the big top. So,
yeah.
But we're really excited. And then, we are unapologetically Christian, and we're not ashamed to say, and the lyric says, although it's been said that all roads lead to Rome, but to the house of many mansions, there's only one way home. And
Yes.
all other ways that you may seek or find will only lead you astray, like the blind leading the blind. There's only
Well,
one way home.
Well, let
Yeah.
me say this. I was in Memphis last week for the Gospel Music Workshop of America, and
Hmm.
you've been there, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, they blowing this song up. You can hear it in the hallways there. They call it the Remnant Convention Center. It used to be the Cook Convention Center
Hmm.
when Church God in Christ was doing their thing back in the day. But man, I kept hearing that song in my ear, and I said, okay, I know I'm hearing it in my sleep at night. Okay.
Wow, wow. Well, we just thank God that, and as I said, it's kind of like from the Mama Burks, from her time with the choir, it's like the baton is being passed, and Benji, Reverend Cone's son, who's leading the song, who's an artist in his own right, it's kind of like almost like his time has come. He's really been faithful. He kind of stood in the wings for a long time, and so we're just glad to see that his gift is making room for him.
Wow. One more other thing, and by the way, how can people get the project, and what do they need to do
Yeah,
uh, to get it?
yeah, you could all things Mississippi Mass. You could just go to MississippiMassChoir.org. Mississippi Mass Choir spelled out. MississippiMassChoir.org. You can get all of our social platforms, how to follow us, how to engage with us on our social platforms, our bookings, how to book us, our upcoming dates, merchandise, and so everything Mississippi Mass, even with uh, downloading, our music to the music platform. So all of that info about Mississippi Mass, everything can be found there.
Wow. Now I'm going to share my screen with you one more time, and I did this on Melvin's show, and I'm going to pull it up right now so people can see what I'm talking about. And I want to say thank you for what you guys did. We talked about Frank Williams, but then right here I'm going to hit the screen, and I pull up the song right now, and look at there. That's
Oh
Frank.
Lord,
That's Frank's daughter,
Frank's daughter and
Jessica.
Jessica, and Cedric, we had been Jessica was actually in my Mississippi Children's Choir. She did a song when she was about 7, 8 years old, and so we've been looking for a song for her to do as a tribute to her dad. And for the last three projects, we've been looking for a song, but we couldn't find the right song, and so we didn't just want to put anything out there because you're talking about Frank's daughter. And
Hmm.
so and it really was inside of 4 weeks before the recording. We still hadn't found the song. And a friend of mine named Zach Harmon, Zach, along with, I'm trying to think of, his last name is Kibble, was with Take Six, Brother
Hmm.
Kibble, Valerie Bailey.
Joey Kibble.
Yes, Joey and Valerie Bailey, who's the wife of Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire. They wrote this song, and Zach, he and I started out as songwriters back in our early 20s, and so he got together with them and they wrote this song years ago, and he sent it to me, and I'm telling you, I woke up one morning, maybe about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I saw that the song had been sent in, and I listened to it, and I literally just cried.
Yeah.
And I knew, I said, this is the song that's going to be the appropriate, uh, it's going to be the appropriate tribute for Frank. And it's entitled "When I Talk to You," but it has a dual message. She's talking about her dad, but she's also talking about her father, the eternal father. So this song, we are so proud that we can introduce Jessica and let her do a tribute to her dad.
Right. It was awesome. I love the silhouettes in the background where you had him, and it was just perfect. And
Yes.
I know the family was real pleased with what the effort has done. So, man, I just want to just say thank you. I've shared this where people can check out and watch because, you know, our roots is the gospel music. That's what Melvin says. It's our past,
Yes.
it's our history. And I produce this show, and I know every Sunday morning on that station, 95.5 in Jackson, Mississippi, I'm
Yes.
listening. I'm listening from the house here in Oklahoma, you know,
Wow.
and the thing I always tell people, because my family, their heritage is Chickasaw Indians, and that's what we have here in Oklahoma. And
Hmm.
the Chickasaw Indians came from Mississippi, and just to be there to play the music from that in the past, our people have got to know where we come from.
Yes.
I was telling them when I was on the panel, I said, yeah, we know the gospel industry has changed. We remember playing albums, 45s, cassettes, CDs, now MP3s, and everything. The
Yes.
industry's changed, but one thing that has not changed, and that's the gospel music. You
It
know.
it it hasn't changed, and so it's and this is the thing that so often when we hear radio and you might have one program or program in 20 stations, and it comes down to preference and people because you don't hear traditional music, I know you're gonna hear it on Rejoice,
Yeah,
but because you don't hear it in the other platform does not mean that traditional music is no longer popular. It's just it comes down to preference.
yeah,
And but when you're going through it, bro, Cedric, when you're going through some things, guess what you want to hear? You
yeah,
want to hear one of them old songs.
yeah. We do it all the time.
Oh
And
Lord.
I showed you a picture of our church out in Tatum's in Bethel, you know, and I came from Mount Zion, and
Oh yeah.
that's the roots. It's in you, you know. If it's in you on a Sunday morning, you don't need no alarm clock to wake you up. The
Don't
first,
need it. And I know in my church we have and I pastor church here in Jackson as well. And so we have and we go back and do one of the old songs. You're gonna have young and old who're gonna respond to it. And
yeah,
so I have nothing against the new music. Matter of fact, I love it. But
yeah,
it's just like, we're called to be fishers of men. And so as fishers of men, we don't use the same bait and the same tackle. There's certain type of bait and tackle you use for certain type of fish. The whole idea is the catch,
yeah,
and so we go and we put so much emphasis on the means of doing it and not the end.
yeah,
So if the contemporary music, if it's catching fish, praise God. But
yeah.
we just know that there's bait and there's tackle out there for every fish. And
You're right about that. And
and
Jerry,
God
I'm
is, yeah, He's called us to do what we do. And I thank God for you, Cedric, because you've been in the game a long time. You're a young brother, but you've been in the game a long time.
39 years, man. That's a long
Wow.
time. You
And
know,
so you play the role that you play is so important because, if a tree fall out in the forest and no one hears it, it makes no sound. So you keep the sound of the Mississippi Mass out there. And I just want to say on behalf of the group, thank you.
well, I appreciate it, man. A couple of times, man, you know, I remember when I was like, man, this was in the 90s. The Christianaires did that song with Paul Porter. Uh,
Yes.
God stepped in on time, man. I was up there playing the music. I had my headphones on like this. I was listening to it. I said, "Oh my God!" And Tyrone and all of the
Yeah.
Christianaires. And I looked up in the studio and I got happy.
Oh
I was
yeah.
inspired because I was listening to the music because I could feel it. And you know,
Hmm.
and I learned when I started being that radio announcer on there to have those scriptures. You just couldn't just flip on the switch and talk. But one day in Dallas and West Dallas, I had to go to this church on Vilbig and host it. And man, I looked up and all of a sudden Johnny Taylor came walking in there. And he said, "Hey, said, how you doing?" And I was like, "Man, you listen to my show?" Now I had a little hair on my head there. And Johnny might have been at the Longhorn Ballroom on the Saturday night. But, and I say this because all those blues singers
Yeah.
all started from the church. And
Oh
then
yeah.
I found out my family, my family, the Cannon side is from a town called Naples in Omaha, Texas, other side of DeKalb.
Mm.
And then they said, "Well, you know, our family is kin to is close to ZZ Hill." And I said, "Well,
Wow.
he's in Texas. Is that right?" And even though he did blues, but they all started in the church, Jerry.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You talk about Johnny Taylor, I started out in the industry as a songwriter. Folks know me more from the administrative side, but I started out as a songwriter. And my very first song that was recorded, Johnny Taylor recorded it. There was a song called Everything's Out in the Open.
Yeah.
And so that was my very first song. And I was so honored that I could say that Johnny recorded my first song. And it was actually was a single that was on his Grammy nominated project entitled In Control. So
Yeah.
I have a history with Johnny, had that connection with him that I'm very proud of.
He was good at it. I can say that.
Ooh, JT.
He was good.
Yeah,
And
JT was one of a kind.
yeah, and he had his office right there in Dallas, right off the highway. And I saw the building. I said, Johnny, what's that TAG stand for? He said, Taylor and God.
Taylor, and Al Wash,
Yeah.
the promoter, Al bought that building. That's where his ALW Enterprise is set up there now.
Yeah.
But Johnny, having been the one to took Sam Cooke's place with the Soul Stirrers, and like you say, he came from gospel, as did Whitney Houston, Aretha. You just go down the line, Lou Rawls, all of them came from this. So gospel is really, we could say that that's the incubator.
So did you see that video of Rosetta Tharpe that was playing that guitar back in the day in the church?
Rosetta, man, you talk about iconic. And, a lot of folks don't know her, but she really could be considered a pop artist because she cut across every music genre, traveled the world, and, she should really be a household name because she's one of the most talented artists, not just in gospel. She's one of the most talented artists of all time. But springing from those gospel roots.
Yeah. Well, Jerry, I want to say thank you, man. I know I went a little long, but that's all right. I'm going to share this with people because I told all the people, I said, listen, one other thing I told them, I said, the other music that you can pack a house out is with quartet music, but it gets the least airplay nowadays,
Yes.
And I said that we got to turn that around and do a better job. And one thing what Mike Chandler does here at Rejoice is he's able to mix it up for everybody because we can go up 55 from Jackson going straight up to St. Louis, and you got to have Harvey Watkins in the Cantons, you know what I mean? It's, so all I can say is that we're going to keep this gospel music going. We missed it during the COVID times. We couldn't fellowship, man. But once we got back together, it was on like popcorn. So Jerry, I want to say thank you. You get the last word and tell everybody why they should get this new song from the Mississippi Mass Choir. One way.
Praise God. I tell you, and I just want to say hello to Brother Mike Chandler. Has been a friend for years, and just go back 30-some years, and maybe even further than that. And Mike is truly an institution. So I just want to thank him. And but I just want to encourage everyone to our supporters to go and get this new release. It's entitled Only One Way Home. I mean, we're just saying that the way back to the Father is found in Jesus alone. And so we really believe that this is a song that's going to bless the nation and really give people direction on how to get to that house of many mansions.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jerry. I want to say
thank you, my brother said.
Thank you to Brett Keller and also to Neely Dickinson out of California for making it possible.